They made us kind of like swear to not have sex before marriage. What is that thing? You wear a ring? It's a purity
the one that
ring.
Nick Jonas wore.
Yes.
Remember when we were watching movie back then with my family and there's this scene where they're kissing, my dad will just take out the remote control. Okay, let's just watch another thing. So
Really?
it's like,
Welcome to Bloom&Banter. Welcome to our podcast, Bloom&Banter, where we raise awareness and navigate complex topics about female sexual health, empowerment, and mindfulness. So we're trying to be very demure, very sweet, and very mindful. My name is Crystal, and joining me today is my co-host, David.
hi, my name is David, and of course today we want to break down stigmas, most importantly, share insights from a different perspective, especially from a male perspective. I think essentially when we look at all the podcasts out there, I realize that there's this thing where it's very woman-centric. I think I find that a lot of men are always left out from the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think Bloom&Banter, we wanted to capture the essence of both perspectives, male and female, especially in this area where it's very hard for me to actually talk about this with our parents, let alone with friends, right? And of course, this kind of topic does not have to be very serious all the time, and that's where banter comes to the picture, right? It's time to bloom together.
One banter at a time.
Today, we are happy to have a very special guest who I believe has a lot to say in this topic. Let us welcome Nicole Chen, also known as the Nictionary across all social media platforms. I believe a lot of us may have seen her dancing videos. Now she has turned to a full-time content creator.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Welcome to Bloom&Banter.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today, actually.
So perhaps you could just give a little bit of flavor to our listeners. How did you actually start your influencer career?
I was studying in London and I finished my degree in 2015. And then I came back home and I was like obsessively posting pictures of myself, as you do when you're like in your early 20s, and then there was a coffee scrub brand that approached me and they were like, can we give you this free product? And I was like, free?
Oh my gosh, I think the coffee scrub you're talking about.
Yeah, it was all the rage back then, right?
Yeah,
Coffee
back
scrubs.
then.
So they gave me a free product now. So the Chinese in me was like, who don't want to take, right? So I just took it. And there were more and more brands that gave me free products, and it eventually became like, can we give you free products and pay you to take the free products? And I'm just like, huh? So I think it was the most Chinese thing to do. It was like, I just accidentally fell into it, and I was like, for people to pay me to give me free things is crazy.
Yeah. So we have also seen the renovation of your new home. It's so beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
So what's new? What's next for you?
I think I have a lot of travel plans. So I've been working my butt off for the past, 10 years, and I don't really take a lot of breaks. In fact, I'm kind of like a little bit sick now because I've just been back to back working. Yeah, but I'm still very happy to be here. I'm hoping that I'll be able to travel a little bit more and take some time out to rest and care for myself. Yeah, that's my plan.
Bloom.
Yes, to bloom and banter.
Yeah. I think all three of us here have kind of different family upbringings and also education background, right? Which definitely played an important role on how we actually view sexual health or sex itself. So Nicole, from your personal perspective, do you think that sexual health or sex in general is being discussed enough in Malaysia?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Of course, no, not at all. I do feel like there's so much stigma surrounding it that even as somebody who is as vocal and open as me, I find it's a really difficult topic to discuss about online. So no, I don't think it's being talked about enough. And there's a lot of shame surrounding it, which I feel like is not healthy for a society in general, because I feel like the moment shame gets attached to something, it becomes something very difficult to talk about. And then everything else that is educational or informational that's important for us to know, it all gets drowned out with it as well. So I don't think it doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Yeah. So when you mention shame, right, do you mean kind of online shame or just within your circle of friends? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's from your families, from traditions, from religions, from cultures. I think it's there's so much surrounding it. It's who wants to talk about it? You know what I mean? And do you want to talk about like, oh, now I have like some weird colored stuff coming out from my coochie, and it doesn't smell very nice.
Like, how do we even start the conversation, right?
Yeah. I mean, even like I remember as kids, if I was having my period and I wanted to ask my girlfriend if she had a pad, the way we would pass it is like drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we would
I
like
saw
take
this
it
in
out from the bag and put it under your wallet and pass it to your friend as if it's like such a taboo thing to even have a period, let alone like to do with sex, you know?
Yeah. For me personally, I don't think there was like shame around period that much because like everyone basically was having period at the same time. But more so, I would like to just share more about how in terms of formal education itself, I don't think I've ever received any actual sex education from school. The only time I actually got to know about like sex in general is through like my biology class. Okay, same, right? Like where they showed you like the female anatomy or like the reproductive organs of like a female and also male in biology class, but that is it. So I actually didn't learn what like penis is. I learned the scientific term of it, which is corpus spongiosum. So I never learned like it was like dick, like the scientific term, because we're learning it for the sole reason of passing SPM itself. How about you, Nicole? So share a little bit more about kind of like your education that you received when you were young.
I went to like a co-ed private school, so everybody was like pretty open in the school. But they did have a sexual health education class, although I don't remember much of it. I do remember that they taught us how to put a condom on a banana. Yeah, they did have
That's
that.
wild, girl.
Yeah, and but then I think it was like they made us kind of like swear to not have sex before marriage. What is that thing you wear a ring? It's a chastity
It's
ring.
a purity.
It's a
ring.
purity
The one that
ring.
Nick Jonas wore.
Yes. So they were like, oh, you guys can all decide to like sign this to just say that you're not gonna have sex before marriage. So all of us are sitting down there kind of like eyeing each other like, what the hell do we do now? And then obviously one by one, everybody got up, and then you don't want to be the odd one out that's just like, oh, I'm gonna have sex. Like I'm not gonna. So all of us went to get the purity ring in the end and then sign our names off. That's what I remember of it. But for the fact that that's what I remember and not the actual sexual education part is something to be said.
It says a lot, right? It's more of like a don't have sex and end of conversation.
I think it's because our education system, the sex ed in Malaysia are heavily focused in abstinence only.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So we are taught to not have sex until you are married, don't get pregnant, and that's it. But what about those who are already pregnant, what they can do? And they don't talk about like abortion and things like that.
Yeah. I feel like you guys are absolutely right. Just because we don't talk about it, it doesn't mean that these issues don't exist.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why we're talking about these problems right now, right? Openly, publicly, so that you and I, we can learn more about how we can tackle these issues. So I'm curious, guys, have your parents actually taught you about sex education at home?
No, not at all, actually. I believe, Crystal, me and you, we came from a very conservative Christian family, right? And
It just doesn't run in our blood.
exactly, and sex is like never.
Does it exist? No, not at
Is
my
that why
household.
I'm sitting here, like on my own chair?
And I remember when we were watching movie back then with my family, and there's this scene where they're kissing. My dad will just take out the remote control. Okay, let's just watch another thing. So it's like, yeah, and then I'm just like that. Okay, act like I did not watch that scene. That kind of
At
thing.
least your dad actually tried to switch off, right? So ours was just like, we were just sitting there and hoping that the scene would just end. Like, we're just cringing, like, oh, okay, let's talk about something else, even up till today.
I remember that I was like really young, like 12 or something. And my mom sat down with me and then she had the birds and the bees talk,
12.
Yeah, I was really, really young, yeah. And I was like, I was not even exposed to anything to do with sex. I didn't understand it at all. And she was just explaining, okay, this and this is how you make a baby. So she wasn't exactly telling me this is how to have sex. She was just explaining like this is what happens for you to make a baby. And the reason why it seared into my memory and I remember this so well is because I ended up asking my mom, is that how you and dad got meat? Is this thing? And then I remember her laughing and feeling so embarrassed, and then I felt embarrassed looking at her. And I think that's why it was like I was really aware about what was happening, and that's why I remember that
Like
she
it
actually
clicked for
Yes.
her. It's like, all right, this is the moment. She probably like put your dad aside. It's like, okay, honey, are we having this conversation right now? 12? All right, okay, just like Nicole.
Yeah, she's like, okay, I'm just gonna explain it. And who knows, your child's gonna ask, did you and dad have sex to get me? And you're just like, you know? So I think she was kind of stunned that I asked her. So yeah, like I did have the conversation with her.
How about you, David? How did you, like, tell me the exact moment when you realized that in order to have you, that has to go in there, you know? Like, who told you that?
Who told me that? Actually, it was a friend. It's not from my parents.
How old were you?
And back then, I think I was probably around 10 or 11. And it was so funny because that time my friend actually took a laptop and then he was like, David, I need to show you something. At that time, I don't even know what sex is about, right?
Yeah.
So he basically opens up the porn site and then he literally just showed me. And the first thing was so, I don't know, I was so shocked because I was seeing something at the person's mouth, you know. I was like, what is this? Oh, I cannot brain that. So, and that time I was exposed, I was like, oh, so this is sex. I didn't know it was like that. And then after that, I was okay. And then we were discussing with friends, and then you know what, and then next thing leads to another, and then that's how I found out about, you know, sex.
For me, I heard it from my sister, and the first reaction that I had was like, ew, why? Why this method out of all methods? Like, why can't you guys just sleep together? And then, because I have always thought like it's like as in like something will go into the female's like body, like just by sleeping next to each other. So when I found out that you actually had to put it inside, I'm like, why? Just like, oh, ew. But after that, like I got to know more through like kind of like self-learning, like, you know, learning it, not from the internet even, right? Because back then, oh my gosh, I sound so old, but like back then it's like kind of weird to be searching these kind of things.
We never actually talk about, you know, what is about, you know, safe sex, you know, consent, things like that.
Interesting. You mentioned consent a couple of times, right? You know, the only time I actually learned about consent, because I was legally trained, was actually really through like the criminal law kind of perspective, like, oh, so these like actual consent. Like for me, I never, okay, maybe I was just a bit like also shielded as well. I never really knew like, oh, you actually need like explicit consent. What is, you know, in what circumstances it doesn't actually mean consent itself, like when you're intoxicated and if you say no halfway and all of that. So yeah. So for you, right, Nicole, like at what age do you actually get to understand better about the term consent itself?
I was really smart about the way that I handled my sex life. So I've had very, very, very limited sexual partners, and all my sexual partners are only with my boyfriends. Yeah, so I don't sleep around and I don't have any one night stands or anything like this. I've never had any of these experiences because I've only ever done it with people that I love. So I don't think it was like a conscious thing to learn about consent or anything like that, but it was just that I think I naturally just knew that my body was a temple and I gotta take care of it. And a man who wants to to also
to
work hard for it.
yeah, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I think consent, I somehow just knew. I knew somehow that it was really important to like just understand that I'm giving something away to somebody, you know, when I have sex with someone, and it's really important to jaga that and keep that very close to my heart anyway.
Which brings me to my next question, right? How useful was, you know, just now we kind of discussed about the sex education. How useful was the sex education that you received when you were young? And then the first sexual experience that you had? Yeah.
I think the fact that my parents were like really open about it, it made me just instantly like seek out for knowledge in general. So the moment I had a long-term partner and I knew that, okay, we were gonna start to explore this thing together, I knew I had to be safe about it. Like, I just feel like, yeah, you could be careless if you really wanted to, but then what would happen is if you really get pregnant, you're gonna baby, that's it. It's like the next 30 years of your life, 40 years of your life is gone, you know? So it's better not to take that risk.
There are also a lot of, I think, adults as well who are actually not equipped with the knowledge and also know where to access these kind of birth control methods and all of that. So maybe, David, you can also just share For you personally, do you think there are like some gaps that you experience in terms of the sex education that you self-taught yourself, and also when you're an adult currently?
The first time I learned about contraception was when I was doing my pharmacy degree, and therefore I was exposed to different type of contraception methods. You know, there are pills, there are IUD, there are implant, and so on. And funny thing, right? Even as an adult now, even picking up condom in a pharmacy can be frankly awkward too sometimes. You know, we had to look away. Okay, there's nobody. Okay, maybe I'll get this one, and then I'll probably take another thing else just to cover together, and then put at the counter. That's it.
Some sweets as well, bigger than
So exactly. So that was like my first encounter, and then after practicing for quite some time, I realized that actually we shouldn't be shy about all this because this is very natural. But I see there's a lot of patients coming in, and then they were just looking away. Okay, there's nobody. Okay, quickly go and ask the pharmacist. Like, okay, I had sex. What should I do next? And that's where I realized that actually this is where the gap is.
I mean, I have done like TikTok videos online just talking about birth control, and the amount of girls that have come to ask me, hey, I'm using like the what do you call the Postinor 2? What is that called?
Morning after pill, Plan B.
Morning after pill as birth control.
Exactly.
So many girls are using morning
Yes.
after pill as birth
Isn't it
control.
like really bad, like morning after pill?
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
like
you should only take it like once a
right?
month at the maximum,
Is it?
right?
Actually, you can take it as frequent as you want,
Oh.
based on guideline, okay? But only on the condition when it's unprotected. I mean, you had unprotected sex lah, because emergency happens, right? But the thing is, doing that can actually disrupt your period cycle. So basically, morning after pill works by delaying your ovulation. So when there's no egg and then sperm cannot fertilize. But a lot of people do not know that once you have ovulated and you take the morning after pill, it actually does not work at all. Because the job is mainly to prevent ovulation. That's it. Like you said, a lot of people use it as a regular form of contraception, right? They think as, and I have incident where people actually take it before sex as well.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's called
That's
morning after
not
pill,
more
morning
like
before.
night before pill.
Yeah, there are people like that as well. So that's why I want to address, morning after pill, it's meant for emergency cases
You
only.
wake up in the morning and then you realize, oh damn,
Yeah.
let's get that pill. So it's morning after pill.
Correct.
Yeah, like there's so many cases in which they like every time they have unprotected sex, which is every single time, because they're too scared to get condoms or they're too scared to get birth control pills. They use it as a
Where did they get the morning after pill?
yeah
From the pharmacy?
lor.
Yeah. Yeah, I also understand because they don't want to be seen taking the birth control pill every day. So this is like the thing that they can.
Like less shameful because you only do it like
Yes,
the
yes.
frequency
Yeah.
is
Less.
Right.
I have a question. If has there ever been an experience you had where a patient comes to you and then lies about their background information, and then you can tell that they're lying?
Yes. You know what? I get this a lot. Sometimes you'll come in, they say that I'm actually buying for my friend. And then the next thing I have is another call. Okay, hello, actually I was the one who bought the pill. Can you tell me how do I take them? If I experience certain side effects, what should I do? So I got this thing a lot. I understand it because nowadays if you go into a pharmacy, you see it's very open. The environment is not conducive enough to have those kind of intimate questions.
Yeah.
it's very clinical and
Yeah.
it's very exposed.
Yes, and sometimes people are queuing behind you, and then the pharmacy will ask you, when was your last unprotected sex? Yeah, things like that. And that's how I came up with a better approach where sometimes I will bring them to an enclosed area where we can have this kind of conversation and then give them what they need.
I mean, I can imagine that supplying you with as much information as possible is the best thing they can do for themselves, right?
Correct.
Because then you would have all the information you need to be able to figure out what yeah.
Yes.
We have talked about kind of like the products, the effects of all of these kind of cultural and societal ties to it. But let's talk about the why, right? The big why. Why do adults shy away from talking about sex? Do you think it's because that adults are afraid of sending the wrong message to their kids, right? It's like, am I actually actively encouraging my kids to have sex? Right? Now that you can do it safely, logically speaking, means that the frequency will increase lah, because less risk, right? Like hit or miss, it's always gonna miss because you have done your research. So do you feel that as adults, if we kind of like talk more about sexual health or sex in general publicly, this is going to perpetuate the perspective that you might be seen as a promiscuous person, or you're just actively promoting casual sex?
I mean, the way I see it, it's like what I see with a lot of my friends' parents, probably including your parents, is that like it's this like I don't want to know thing. You know what I mean? It's like what's behind me. As long as I don't see it, I don't know about
Like
it.
an
So it's
ostrich
not
lah.
happening. Yeah, exactly. They just bury their head in the ground.
Yeah.
And so I find this approach is like very normal in like the previous generations. It's like if I don't talk about it, then it's not real. You know, and if I talk about it, then it becomes real. And I find that with our generation, we're a lot more open and transparent. And I'm sure you guys also all have the feeling. It's like I would rather tell my kid like, fine, if you want to smoke, you just tell me that you want to smoke, and then we can at least discuss what are the parameters around like your health when it comes to smoking or anything like that. If you want to have sex, it's better to tell me that you're having sex so that I can discuss with you how to do it safely. And if you have any questions or you have a pregnancy scare, you can come and talk to me about it, you know?
I think I would do it. I mean, I will reach out to them. Of course, it's very hard for them to even initiate this kind of conversation. I mean, as a parent, I would probably, start with something like, showing them, the anatomy, and then probably you can show.
It's like Papa's a pharmacist. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. It can be scientific driven,
Yeah,
but at
yeah.
the same time, I think most important part of sex education is about protecting yourself. It's not just about anatomy, sex, and have baby, but it's actually more than just that.
So I think I'm definitely conflicted about what I want to teach my kids though. So I feel like there are kind of like, it's also evolving for me as well, like which level that I am comfortable to be in right now. Like I will only know when I'm a parent one day lah, but hopefully I will kind of like reach between the level of intermediate and advanced level, right? And instead of just kind of like going to the basic level as how our parents approach these kind of topics.
I mean, I feel like as long as my kid feels comfortable coming to tell me anything. That is the most important thing. That like we don't need to have so many conversations about it. We don't have to have like a fully open conversations where you share with me all to do your sex life with your boyfriend or whatever.
Like TMI, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It would be like, to me, it's like, yeah, you want your kids to have like the best relationship with you, and you want to be able to share as much as you can with each other. But to me, it's like if they have a pregnancy scare, or if they're having like some weird discharge, or they're bleeding, or something is not right, they don't feel good, I want them to not have that shame attached to being able to speak to a parent about it. At least your parent has to be on your side, and you're like, hey, I'm like, my period is like running a bit late and I am sexually active and I'm not really sure what to do. They can be somebody that you can lean on to ask for help, And even if I as a parent don't have the answers, I want to be that person to figure it out for my kid. I wouldn't want my kid to go and figure it out on their own. So yeah, I just don't want there to be shame involved in them coming to tell me things. So I would care more about that than so much as to like, because in the end, the internet will educate them in some sense, and they will find stuff out everywhere, and you can only do so much as a parent, But yeah, to me, it's like that safety that they have with you and that openness they have with you to discuss anything they require is the most important thing.
That's so good. So parents to be or current parents, please follow this model, yeah? I think that's how a functional society should work actually, right? Like open communication.
Very interesting because all this also depends on how the parent responds to it, right? Sometimes if you tell your parents about it, the parents are like, how come you ask me this kind of question? It's not right. So that kind of response, you will push the child back, and then next time, if I have anything, I won't actually ask my parents. I will go and figure out myself.
Even like relationships especially with daughters and relationships with their boyfriends, if they're being pressured, it's not even the fact that they are having sex or not, but it's like the boyfriend is pressuring them or they're feeling unsafe in the relationship with their partner. Like, I don't know, I just feel like there needs to be always a window open for them to reach out to you. It doesn't mean that you will have to go and barge in their door all the time and always ask her to leave their door open. Like, hey, how are you today? Can you tell me everything, But they need to have that way to talk to you about anything that they're struggling with.
Have you guys heard about the Ant Room, like the career?
Yeah, crazy. That's so terrible.
So I feel like there's a lot of shame, actually attached to the victims itself, right? How could you actually go through so many cycles of abuse and not tell anyone because you feel ashamed? You don't feel like there's a safe space for you to voice out to anyone that you are close to. So let's just kind of discuss about, besides the parents, right? How do you think society as a whole can do better in this approach towards sex education or sex in general?
I think we have to come with a very open mind. I think most importantly is to always build a safe space, which is what we are doing right now. I mean,
Bloom&Banter.
obviously, when we wanted to do this, we were a bit hesitant, right? Because we don't want to.
I called my mom and I was like, I'm gonna do this podcast and sex is related, but please don't like be frightened. Please, like everything's gonna be like okay. And she's like, okay, I'll see what's gonna be posted and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's where we should start first and start from a space where we are freely open to discuss. Most of being vulnerable to this kind of
Less
topic.
judgmental.
Less judgmental. Yeah. And of course, back then, practicing in the healthcare profession, where we always taught to not to judge the patient, history or whatever. You're just there. Our duty is to serve them at our best interest. So and whenever I see one, I will try to actually educate them a little bit, no matter what. Even if they have period pain or they are coming here to get morning after pill, I always try to give.
Like sprinkle a little bit of additional knowledge
Yes,
right there.
correct. Because I realized a lot of women, they do not actually understand their body very well. And it's sad to see because some women, they come in, they just get painkillers just for the period pain, but they don't actually question why is this like this every month.
Endometriosis.
Endometriosis, there's
yeah.
PCOS, there's so much things, a whole spectrum of things in women's life cycle, right? And initiating the conversation is always very important. I felt that,
Nicole?
My partners will buy me the birth control pills, you know what I mean? Yeah, or they will look it up for me. Yeah, and they will so I'm still on birth control and my current partner is like telling me like, hey, maybe it's not so good for you to keep doing this. Maybe it's better for you to get the implant. So he's like kind of helping me doing the research to go and figure out what's best for me. And that's why I feel like having a good partner around is amazing
And that's a shared
for you.
responsibility,
Exactly.
right? Man, please step up. Like, honestly, that is such like, this
Exactly.
is,
Yeah, and he offered, he was like, if money is an issue, don't worry about it. Yeah, we can
got
share
you
it for it.
covered.
Yeah, and he's not seeing it as like, hey, this is your responsibility, you're a woman, I get to do what I want. So I find if I wouldn't really have advice or any ideas of what society can do, but from an individual level, I think taking care of yourself sexually, finding a good partner who is in it together with you, who loves you, is like really important. And then fundamentally, I don't think you will go very, very wrong, Yeah.
So there are kind of actually 2 points to that, right? Firstly, it's from your perspective. Personally, I would actually need to be cautious, like exercise caution when I choose my sexual partner.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it is from the male perspective, right? So male, you should also kind of step up and see this as a shared responsibility. Initiate conversations about when you're not just performing the act itself and then it's just done. Right. The female itself, because we have to kind of like go through a lot more baggage, right? Like emotionally, physically. Hence, to also be compassionate to the person that you are seeing, you should initiate and be more proactive in asking like, well, how can I actually alleviate some kind of like the burdens that you're going through? Are you actually experiencing like mood swings because of the birth control? Can we kind of like, switch to the other one? That would be actually so healthy in a relationship itself.
Yeah, it's super and you feel safe,
Yeah, for my females out there, right? Sometimes when you have casual sex, right, you actually kind of lose some kind of like emotional side of it as well, right? You want to say, yeah, I can fuck around. Then you find out, sis, and then you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't get over him, even though this is just a one night stand or whatever. So really try to be more mature about it, right? Don't just because your friends say you should do it, that's why you're gonna do it.
I mean, so that's the thing, right? If your intention is to sleep around and have a one night stand, you need to be very, very clear that that's what you're doing. And then you can go ahead and do it, you know what I mean? And I don't discriminate for anybody who like enjoys that part of it. It's just, for me, it's a preferential thing. But I find it's like, if you want to have an emotional connection and you want somebody to treat you this way and you go looking for it in one night stands, that's when you can have a disparity of your expectation versus the reality of what things will be. So you need to fundamentally understand the reality of what casual sex will really give to you, which is just a good feeling for one night, and then you have to let it go. And then if you can go into it with a clear, sound mind, knowing that this is the intention, this is what will happen, then I think you will protect. I mean, in the end, we were talking about this. It's just about protecting yourself and how you feel at the end of the day. The thing about it is that sex is an inevitable thing.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like, it's either, like I said, I think even the government treats it like our parents, it's just like, la, 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 la. So it's not something to like close your eyes on. I feel like it's something to approach with your eyes open, to know that kids and young people will be sexually active, and it's much better to address what will happen if people are sexually active and to have more I guess like focus on how do we get young people to have safe sex as opposed to having so much things about abstinence and just pretending as if young people are not having sex, you know? Yeah, and I think having more, I guess like places for, like safe spaces for them to reach out to ask for information is also really important, but it is subjective to say whether that is something that will happen for Malaysia.
Yeah.
Let's hope, fingers crossed. I mean, that's why I feel like it's cool that we're doing this kind of podcast and everything, because if you really want to change the system, it's better to do it yourself, you know? Yeah.
So thank you, Nicole, for joining us today. And also, I would like to shout out to Bayer for making this dream to a reality where we can have our first episode with our special guest here.
Yay!
Thanks for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you do, make sure that you follow us on our social media and stay tuned for our new episodes.
Yay!
Bye.